Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much. I will try to follow the presentation from here, if you don't mind, with my laptop. And hope we have some animations and some videos, so I hope it works. But let me start by saying thank you to the members of the organization. I have been participating in social media for the last 2-3 years. I like this event very much. I think it's a great event that we're doing in our city. So I hope we can continue expanding the reach of this event in the future. So thank you very much for inviting me. As I was presented, my job actually in Microsoft today is to work with the governments from several countries and see how we can incorporate digital transformation into their agendas. I think we are living a fantastic times in terms of innovation and in terms of computing. This discussion is not going to be, when Ernesto asked me to present here with you, says, you work for Microsoft, you guys are doing a lot of things, why don't you come and share with us what you are doing? So I hope this presentation is not sound like a commercial. So this is not the idea. So this presentation is about sharing with you some ideas of things that we are doing. And I think it's about optimism or pessimism. No? Microsoft started, as you know, several years ago, several decades ago, with a mission. That mission was just to have a desktop, a computer in every desktop around the world. And as you can imagine, that vision became obsolete by the reality pretty soon. So in the reinvention of the company, we decided to adopt a new vision, and that's where we are today. We are in the business of empowering people to achieve more, as simple as that. And it's not, when we mean people, organizations all around the globe. So the digital inclusion is something that we need to be very careful about. And we want to be really ambitious about how to really go beyond digital barriers of digital adoption and promote digital inclusion around the world. I think the discussion is relevant today because technology is mainstream. So when we discuss technology, it's no longer about the group of people. Technology touches our lives every single day. It's part of our lives. Determines the way we connect, how we do our companies, how we connect with people, with our family. And there is still some fundamental debates installed in the society today. Is really technology today helping to promote human and economic progress and the social development? Or really is excluding people? Is really creating wealth for everybody, or just creating opportunities for a few? Is really technology is going to address some of the fundamental issues that we have regarding privacy that we read every day in the press, or really is going to push in a situation with no exit? So I think the discussion is relevant. More and more we will see that becoming part of the mainstream. So with that in mind, and our purpose to become really a company that enables opportunity for everyone globally around the world, is that we set this new vision. And when we discuss how, we need to also discuss how we see the world. And not long ago, many people used to see the world when the internet disruption came. And I thought that technology was about the browser. And back then we say it's more than a browser. Technology will affect our lives in a different way. And today we see the world in this way. So today we live in a world that is mobile first, but it's also cloud first. Both things are the same pace, because they are totally interrelated. And when we discuss mobility, it's not about our devices. So we all are in love with our devices, with our phones, with our tablets, with our computers. But it's not about that. Actually, mobility means how the devices enable us to become mobile. It's about us, not the devices. And we believe that if you embrace that concept, we need to start discussing, for instance, how with the ever shrinking and introduction in the market of devices that are becoming smaller and more and smarter, what is going to happen? Really, what if it is possible to think of devices that will be disposable, if it's possible to think of devices that will be interchangeable, if it is possible to think that a user can replicate experiences about several devices across the ecosystem. And the second point is the cloud, because the cloud computing today is the new paradigm in computing. And we will see that a little bit more in detail, but basically, in order for the mobility to work, we will have to continue generating this pervasive amount of information that is streamed every day, every second of our life in our devices, and create that virtuous circle. Devices will get smarter, and they will feed information that in turn, that information will be analyzed and will be returned with more intelligence, and that will complete the cycle. So this is our world. This is how we think the things are going to happen in the future. So for a company like ours that really aspire to impact every one of the 7 billion people that live around the world, I think we are really far from doing that. This is something that we need to think about. So I wanted to start sharing a story of one thing that we developed that will give you an idea of the things that we are thinking ahead. By the way, today, almost 60% of the people are excluded from having access to internet facilities. So that is significant if you think in terms of the total population. We are talking about more than 4 billion people today that are in this condition. Take a look at the video. We have sound? We need sound. Apologies, we have a... We don't have sound. ¿Sí? Vale, pues. There we go. Ready? Sorry. Apologize for that. Now with the sound. Well, I don't know if you could hear in the back, but the people that you see in the picture, Beatrice is a fantastic woman. This is in a rural school in Kenya, and she is the principal of this high school. This school didn't have any kind of communication so far until recently. What you see behind that antenna, they have a satellite dish at the top, but right in the middle you will see kind of the magic of this, which is a Wi-Fi, basically a Wi-Fi hub, the same Wi-Fi that you can have in your home. This is a special one that can have a range of about 10 miles and as a radius of coverage. This technology is called TV white spaces. What happens is that the most used form of communication today continues to be the regular TV, which is broadcasted using a spectrum of waves in almost every country of the world. Developed, underdeveloped, we still have these airwaves traveling and carry the signal of the TV. And what happens is that many times, most of that spectrum is unused. So with this technology that is extremely inexpensive, what you can do is to select pieces of that spectrum and carrying that digital information through that. That's why it's called TV white spaces, because it's leverages the use of that white space. And we developed this technology along with several partners, and we started really pretty soon. And today we have more than 15 countries, close to 200,000 people that are enjoying this technology. The impact was immediate. So just in this school, the grades of the kids improved almost half a point in less than a year. So these people that already have access to information, the different way to learn. But it's not only that. So since the reach of that antenna goes beyond the school, the families of these people can also have access. And this is a rural area, and now the extended family of these kids can have access to information of the market, of the commodities, the things that they sell, marketplaces around the world. So it actually was a very disruptive transformation. Penetrating with broadband in rural areas is a challenge. It's in developed markets and underdeveloped markets. If you think this is only a matter of emerging economies, it's not the reason. We work with these type of technologies even in the US, in rural areas where we have part of the country that are not served by the companies, telecommunication companies, because it's really expensive. The density of population is really low, and economically it's not feasible. So this is an idea how with very, very low investment, you can really expand dramatically the reach of the digital inclusion in these areas. So when we think in terms of enabling every single person in the world to achieve more, which is our vision, we really come down to three bold ambitions, so that we want to excel in three things, which is a little bit different from the concept or the idea you may have from the Microsoft in the past. And we want to excel in these three things. So we want to basically be the company that transforms productivity on the world, the way we work, how we do things. And we also are committed to build an intelligent cloud. And we will see some examples later what we mean by the intelligent cloud. And the third is about the personal computing. And again, this is not about the devices that we use every day. It's not about the computers or the tablets. This is much, much richer, and you will see an example below. To us, this is the way we can help to remove the blockers societies have today to embrace the digital transformation. And we are removing physical blockers in time, physical constraints, time, space, and also complexity, because the simplification is also part of how we see the world. So if you want, I'm going to share a couple of examples, short examples of this. I am an optimistic, so if you work in this industry, you have to be. So I think we're all aware of the risk we face every day regarding the technology. So those the discussions that we mentioned at the beginning are still active. But I hope that you share my optimism. If you don't share it, I hope that after the end of the presentation, you can really come out with some new things, new ideas, and hopefully a little bit of optimism as well, as I have. So So let's see one by one. Productivity in the back then, a couple of decades ago, 3 decades ago, productivity was all of it. It was a very important topic, and companies and organizations will spend a lot of money redesigning processes, right? And that was very famous in the 80s, in the 90s. Everybody was redesigning processes to really adapt the new environment. Later, it came this idea that processes at the organization level were exhausted. The marginal return of continued working was really low. And we need to add the component, the personal component. So actually, the combination or the intersection between the organization and the personal will create the new incremental step in the economy. And then came the internet and the apps and the world of apps, and everything was redesigned. So today, we don't think about redesigning processes. We think about reinventing processes. And we think about reinventing the way we do business and the way we operate. And we have that ambition. So we want to become the #1 company on the world, helping people to become more productive, helping people to use more free time to do whatever they want to do, helping organizations to become more efficient. So these examples these two examples I'm going to share with you are part of that. So take a look. One of the examples that I liked is the Special Olympics. This is a very simple thing, but the Special Olympics is an organization that today has almost 5 million athletes around the world. It's a huge organization, covers more than 170 countries around the world. Until recently, the way they manage things were completely manual. So you can imagine that when an athlete would complete a race, they would have to wait days, sometimes weeks, to input the data and to know where we are compared to the others. It was really a point where it was unmanageable. So we partnered with this organization and decided to change things. And take a look. So cloud technology allows to have instant information, not only about the performance of the athletes, but also the health status, the training they need, and the many other parameters that are available and in real time. That is changing. If you heard that what the person mentions, that they are really allowing to dedicate, to save hundreds of thousands of hours of all the gigantic network of volunteers that work around the world to support this organization. And that time now is dedicated to improve and to support the athletes in a much better way. Another important thing that is happening is the involvement of the governments. Governments, they will have to play a big role in this digital transformation. Because changes in government happen slower, that we will see some delay. I think we are still far from seeing a government inventing the next Uber or the next Airbnb, but things are getting there. And for a company like us, it really aspires to impact every single person. And we need to focus in the communities that today are excluded from the digital transformation. So we developed this partnership with a couple of NGOs in England and developed this project. Take a look. When we partnered with this NGO, we discovered actually a new world. In England only, there are close to 2 million people that are blind or visually impaired. And almost 10% of those, they never go out of their homes. Even in the US, more than 60% of the people unemployed are blind, that they don't find a job. And we take that seriously. Actually, if you are in this industry and you know that we have braille terminals when people, and I personally have met several people that are visually impaired, severely visually impaired, and they are excellent professionals. So we take that seriously. I think, and the part of the inclusion, digital inclusion, must consider how we can incorporate more and more people into the digital life of everyone. So you can see that with the very simple technology, with an app, with a geo-referenced app and the part of headsets, really you can transform the life of these people and can incorporate to the regular life like everybody else. The second aspect that we would like to become, we would like to excel, and we would like as part of our bold ambition, is building the intelligent cloud. And a few years ago, we were discussing about the cloud, building the cloud. And this is a phenomenon that today is the new paradigm of the computers, right? And more and more people now are putting computing power into the cloud, converting which was a traditional hardware or infrastructure into services. So the benefit of that is huge scalability. So you consume the services as you need, and we don't need it, you turn it off. And which really creates a big impact, in particular for large organizations. But it's not only that. Over these years, there were these gigantic data centers around the world. We're creating this amazing computing power with a scale that it was unthinkable before, and at a cost that is really, really affordable for everyone. So you may think that the cloud is actually a great equalizer, because the opportunity to consume computing power in every country is the same. So like in the old days, you would have these specific centers of research that had the money and the funds to really create this or to invest in this computing power. But now it's not anymore. So what we see is that some talent is not migrating to the centers, to developed centers. They are staying in the countries. They are starting companies in the country. They are creating innovation in their countries, and that will be a huge impact around the world for everybody. So the cloud is essential to, and is the one that is fuel all this transformation. And since we already passed the discussion of the cloud and of these data centers that are, by the way, very special data centers and not conventional data centers. The conditions of scalability and elasticity of these centers are beyond what is the standard in the industry. But now we need to discuss what to do with that information, right? That's why we talk about building the intelligent cloud, which is different, and that's what we are. And certainly this is impacting. The cloud is impacting the way we do research, the way we do medicine, the way we educate. And let me show you some examples, and we see what I am talking about. This is Professor Feng in Virginia Tech, and he has been pioneering this technique of decoding the human, the genetic map of the human, and you will see the gigantic advance that we are experiencing these years thanks to this superpower computing availability in the cloud. Take a look. Just a few years ago, decoding a genetic map would cost close to $100 million. And that cost dropped dramatically thanks to the computing power to thousands, to a couple of thousands today, and will probably be pennies. Now, I know that this triggers a lot of ethical discussions, privacy discussions, so eventually we will find a way to store our genetic map in a way that is secure, that is private, but think of the impact this technology will have in what we call the personalized medicine, right? So doing the treatment that is specifically for the condition of every customer, as opposed to what we do today. In the past, this was unthinkable. We could not think of create that level of personal medicine, but today, thanks to this technology, it is possible. So this is another great example how it is opening up new opportunities in the medicine field. Another important service that the cloud is offering is that the capacity to analyze information extremely fast, hundreds of thousands of variables in a matter of milliseconds, which is something that also was not available before. So that is creating a big impact in engineering, mechanics. Maybe you will recognize the person of the video. She's a famous, is a TV star. But actually, she's the first woman who broke the speed record in ground, 400 miles a couple of years ago, and she is willing to do the same in 2-3 years to beat the 800 miles. So the point here is that thanks to the cloud, she is able to really monitor their constructions and push to the limit and extract the maximum of the engineering models that she designs. Take a look. The ability to monitor millions of variables in a fraction of a second is really pushing the limits of the engineering, reducing dramatically the cost of the prototypes, right? So that will create a breakthrough in terms of how they design the new mechanics and how will we shorten the cycles of design and release to the market more innovation. Another example that I wanted to call out is the cloud will allow to gather tremendous amount of information to the extent that all that information will be beyond the human scale. So we don't know what to do. It happens to us when we go to a search engine and we start and there are 2 million pages, 3 million pages, right? What we do, we just focus on the first 3, 4 because it's impossible for us. So actually, we need to, part of the building the intelligent cloud means we need to start to create intelligence that help us to analyze and return that information in knowledge, knowledge that can really apply, that is a practical use of that knowledge. So I like this example of the city of Glasgow because I think they are pioneering in one thing. As the cities move forward and start to sense everything with cameras, with pollution sensors, with monitors, we need to ask ourselves, what is the city doing with that? So that we have this initiative called Open Government, Open Data, which some of the governments are embracing. And what they do is they process that information and expose that information and open that information to the public. So what this creates is a new ecosystem of developments and applications that in turn provide service to the citizens. So that's how you close the loop. And in the case of Glasgow, you will find apps, for instance, for, I mean, the most common app that we know is the traffic, right? So we all open up Waze or whatever you use, and we know where the traffic is. But you can go beyond with involvement of the citizens of the place and start to adding new applications and new services for a specific, like if you're a cyclist and would like to know which route you use with the less hills or more hills, that's the type of thing. It's a very rich ecosystem of information that in turn, if it is conveniently used, will return as a benefit to the citizens. So this is another great example. Another thing that we see is reach in terms of media services, right? And apologize to the Barca fans, but we got a deal with Real Madrid just a few months ago. And Real Madrid is a very interesting company, enterprise, if you want. They have more than 450 million fans around the world. And you may think that most of those fans are in Spain, or maybe US, but it is not. Indonesia, for instance, had more Real Madrid fans. So actually what they approach us is how we can recreate the same experience that the people that live in Madrid can experience when they go to the stadium, and how we can really transport to the rest of the world, to the rest of the 450 million fans. So we are in this project with them. It will take probably 2-3 years, but the idea is to really recreate that experience across multiple devices and across the world. Take a look. We see media services as one of the key areas in the future as well. And of course, that would be impossible to do if you don't have really massive computing power beyond that can help to stream all this information. The third bold ambition that we have has to be with the personal computing. And I said at the beginning, this is not about the devices. So it's not about the computer that we use. This is much more than that. And it's about how we really recreate our experience across multiple devices, but more importantly, how we change the way we interact with our devices, right? The computing era was born with a mouse and a keyboard, which as today seems to be a little bit outdated, right? So it happens that in the last years, many companies have been doing a lot of research trying to step up the way we communicate with computers. It's not an easy task to do. It seems to be easy, but it is not. And in that category, we encompass things like voice recognition, instant translation, which is helping to knock down barriers of communications across the world with different languages, and overall how we interact. And we have this nice example that is called Hololens. I don't know if you are familiar with that, but a couple of years ago, a year ago, we see people nodding, good. HoloLens actually is a pair of glasses, but I will help you to see the reality in a different way. Take a look. I'm going to show the case of this university, Western Reserve, and the way it's changing how they teach and how they do educate in using this technology. when we talk about virtual reality, everything is virtual. Everything is not real. And we are used to deal with games and in the games consoles, and we see flying dragons all over the place and things like that. Augmented reality is the overlay, overimposition of the reality with the virtual reality. So actually, we can simulate new scenarios of the reality, the environment that you have around through these virtual models. Interesting enough, when we announced that, we got some traction. A couple of developers approached us and started working in the APIs and things like that. But nobody paid much attention. It was not mainstream yet. But then something happened, which is the Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go is probably the best example of what the augmented reality, which is the name of this technology, right? So the imposition of the virtual world into the real world. And all of a sudden, everything changed. So you can have an idea of the tremendous impact this is going to have in the way we teach, in the way we educate. But it's not only that. I will mention a couple of examples ahead. But this is a very important technology that we will see picking up in the future as well. Also in the same line, the way we interact with computers, we have this interesting example. And pedagogically has been debated if really how much we lost as human beings when we learn interacting the computer with a keyboard. And there are some studies that says when we stop writing, we lost some capacity, cognitive capacity to learn. So take a look at this example. This is a simple application, but how we wouldn't lose sight of combining the power of the technology, but also without losing sight of what our human interface is, right? So combining both things is what we see another frontier, and you will see a lot of progress coming in what is called the natural human interface, which is the way we interact with computers in the future. I'm going to just mention one last example. I will point to you a site where you can find more examples, and there are plenty of those, but we don't have time to cover that, which is this new thing that we are piloting that is conversation as a platform, right? That's what it's called. And we firmly believe that when you combine the computing capacity to do tasks faster and in a repetitive way, with the human nature, with the empathy, the emotions, the feelings, and you can have a combination that is a positive combination. So it's not necessarily the one thing will displace the other. We don't believe that, and I think that it is possible to train machines to behave in a way that become helpful to us, and not in a way that will replace eventually us in the future. I think we are far from seeing that. So conversations as a platform is a new framework that we are developing, which obviously will combine those two things, augment human abilities and experiences through the use of computing. But we fully understand that we need to be done in a trustworthy environment, in a way that we need to learn also how to trust the computer and observing our ethical principles and our basic principles of privacy and security. So what this framework is about is people, agents that are basically engines of artificial intelligence, of cognitive intelligence, that we call digital assistants. This is part of what we think is our next frontier. I think we can train the machine to become some sort of our assistant, right? And the third component is bots. I don't know if you're familiar with bots, but bots are these small pieces of code that we use to do some repetitive tasks, things that the human can do, but are really through a bot, through this piece of code, you can do faster and more efficiently. For instance, one example of bot is when you go to eBay and you try to bid for an item, and then somebody outbid you, and then you outbid. So there is a bot there that is monitoring permanently the auction, and that will bid for you until you reach a maximum that you set. That's an example of bot. So actually, we envision in the future there will be this conversation between these three components, right? People having conversation with people conversation with having conversation with agents, agents with bots, bots with agents, and so on. And that will significantly improve the experience that we have in the human interface with the computers. Take a look to the example. Some of you may think that buying a dress is not a noble cause, and I would tend to agree with that. But I'm trying to to build the case so that you can imagine the possibilities that it has. What you saw there is a real person interacting with a bot or with a digital agent, as opposed to be searching for clues all over the place, all over the internet, through different apps. You can do it through a single agent. And the thing is that this agent eventually will learn about your tastes, about who you are, about what you do, and will be able to help you in a much better way. Think only of some other applications that we're thinking about this. For instance, in health, as you know, for instance, the treatment of chronic conditions is many times related to how you change behavior. And it's almost impossible to create help desk that can be in contact permanently with people and help to really provide guidance every single minute or when the people require. This kind of technology will help to introduce tremendous levels of scalability to this type of help desk and aid help, and that will definitely change the way we behave. And how we, by changing the way we behave, we can improve things sensitive as our own health. So there are many more examples. I will give you a link. You can see more HoloLens and the way you can, by imposing in the reality, your virtual reality, this will probably change the way we buy and the way we interact. We do commerce around the world. This is another example, the astronaut, Scott Kelly. They also use HoloLens because this is a way they use to transmit to the central base what's going on in the space. But also from the central base, they can stream virtual things that are happening around the ship that they cannot do. This is also a technology that we're experiencing, for instance, in warehouse. So when you get into a warehouse with a glass like that, You will see the reality, but overimposing that reality, you can see elements of information that can help you to expedite the process of moving the warehouse and gaining significant, having significant gains in terms of efficiency. And so on, and today the weather, the way we forecast the weather, 10 billion requests is something that is completely out of the scale of the normal data center. Thanks to the cloud, we will be able to predict much better the weather. Or examples like we have in our own company, father that really used the cloud to create, to find some form of cure to his son that suffers from epilepsy. So in closing, all this is how we envision the world and how we connect all these ambitions together. And when you translate this framework to the way we operate every day, the business that we do, our enterprise, it doesn't matter if you are in a commercial side, or if you are in a government, if you are an NGO. This framework actually, we need to ask fundamentally how we are adapting our day-to-day operations to this new reality. But this is going to be the new reality, how we change our business, how we transform our business to adapt to this new reality. And what you see there is we are not the only ones sharing this, right? But this is most of the analysts today see this kind of a virtuous circle in which you engage to your customers in a different way, to the stakeholders in a different way, empower your employees in a different way. So the idea is that you can release knowledge and innovation among your own people with the new tools, and you will optimize your operations, and eventually you will change the product that you produce. And when you analyze that virtuous circle, this is nothing but what the World Economic Forum today defines as the fourth industrial revolution. This is what we are living today. And we will see tremendous change coming in the autonomous vehicles and all the physical world, in the biological world, the genetics maps, and things like the Internet of Things. Maybe tomorrow we will walk in the computers, and the computer will be this room full of sensors by which we interact through our human voice, and the computer will recognize our voice, only our voice, as a way to identify, and the devices that we all wear will disappear. That's the future that we'll see. How much it will last, we don't know. We can only see that since the first industrial revolution happened at the end of the 1700s with the steam power. About 100 years later came the second industrial revolution, which was basically the introduction of power and the assembly lines. Until the 60s, the end of the 60s or the 70s, when the computing was introduced as a way to accelerate that transformation. And the experts say that we are now living the fourth industrial revolution, where you will see the Internet of Things and the tremendous amount of cloud computing supporting that interaction. And you will see a lot of artificial intelligence coming. You will see a lot of analytics coming, and the sustaining that ecosystem that we described at the beginning. So that's pretty much it. I think we are running out of time. If you like this type of stories, I invite you to go to this link. You will see many more examples. I think we have to be ready. The next thing, the next revolution will be probably more invisible than the previous. We don't see that happening, because as our devices and our computing power increases in power, in the level, and you will see our devices shrinking, getting smarter, and it will probably become sensors. We will not see that happening, but it will happen. So I hope by now you can share a little bit of our optimism, my optimism. I don't know if that's true or not. If not, I think we are all aware, and I particularly work with governments, and there is a lot of concerns, as you can imagine, about the privacy and the security. We all live through that every day, but I'm sure that eventually the technology will evolve and to overcome that. And as we're seeing an evolution also of the judiciary systems around the world, conversations about different countries to harmonize judiciary systems, and we will see this progressing much faster than any potential downside that we may appreciate today. So thank you very much for being with me, and I will be available later. If you want to contact me, feel free to do it, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.